My beloved child. Do not rush past this moment. There was a reason your eyes stopped here instead of somewhere else. Thousands of voices compete for your attention every single day, yet somehow, against every distraction, you found yourself here. Perhaps you believe it was chance. Perhaps you think you simply became curious. But stories have a mysterious way of finding the people who need them most. Be still for a little while. There is a conversation unfolding in places your eyes cannot reach. A heart you believed had grown silent has not forgotten. A soul you assumed had buried every memory still carries your name through quiet moments that no one else witnesses. And tonight, in this fictional tale of hope, healing, and unseen love, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Someone whispered words your soulmate never expected to hear. Those words did not bring peace. They brought disbelief. They brought tears. And before this night reaches its end, they will change everything they thought they knew about your story. For a long time your soulmate believed they understood why your smile sometimes looked incomplete. They believed they knew why your laughter occasionally sounded like it was covering something deeper. They believed your strength came naturally. They had no idea. Not even close. Because some wounds never introduce themselves with scars. Some pain learns to smile. Some heartbreak becomes so practiced at pretending that even those standing closest fail to recognize it. Your soulmate was one of those people. Not because they lacked love. Not because they refused to understand. Simply because no one had ever opened the hidden door leading to the truth. Until now. Far away from the noise of crowded rooms and endless opinions, a conversation began almost by accident. At least, that is how it appeared. One ordinary sentence became another. One forgotten memory awakened another. One person mentioned your name with unexpected hesitation. Your soulmate noticed. Something felt different. The air changed. The silence between words became heavier than the words themselves. People rarely grow quiet without reason. They leaned closer. Their heart sensed what their mind could not yet explain. What happened to them? The question sounded simple. The answer was anything but. The room seemed to shrink. Eyes avoided one another. Someone looked toward the floor before speaking. Another took a slow breath. And then, the first piece of truth emerged. Not the entire story. Only enough to make every comfortable assumption collapse. Your soulmate felt their heartbeat become louder. Because suddenly the version of you they had carried inside their imagination no longer matched reality. They realized they had mistaken survival for ordinary living. They had mistaken resilience for ease. They had mistaken silence for peace. How many people walk through this world carrying invisible storms while everyone compliments the sunshine on their face? More than anyone realizes. Your story became one of those storms. The person speaking did not sound dramatic. They sounded regretful. Almost guilty. As though every word carried weight they wished someone else had carried long ago. There are things, they quietly admitted, that they never wanted anyone to know. Your soulmate froze. Not because secrets existed. Everyone has secrets. But because something inside those words felt sacred. Like opening a letter that had remained sealed for years. Your soulmate wanted to interrupt. To ask another question. To demand clarity. Instead, they listened. Sometimes the deepest truths arrive only when we stop trying to control the conversation. Outside, the evening continued exactly as it always had. Cars passed. People laughed. Lights flickered across windows. Nothing in the world appeared different. Yet inside one heart, everything had begun changing. Have you ever discovered that someone's greatest strength was actually born from their greatest suffering? It transforms the way you see them forever. That was happening now. Every memory your soulmate shared with you began replaying. Moments they once considered ordinary suddenly revealed hidden meanings. The times you became unusually quiet. The occasions when your eyes drifted somewhere far beyond the present moment. The nights you disappeared without explanation. The smiles that arrived just a little too late. Every small mystery connected like stars forming a constellation they had never noticed before. And with every connection came another question. Who made you believe you had to carry everything alone? Who convinced you your pain would become a burden if anyone else saw it? Who taught your heart to apologize for wounds it never deserved? The answers remained hidden. For now. But hidden does not mean forgotten. There are seasons when truth waits patiently because revealing itself too early would only deepen the hurt. This fictional story enters the moment when waiting has finally ended. The person across from your soulmate hesitated again. I shouldn't be the one saying this. Those words landed like stones sinking into still water. Ripples spread through every thought. Shouldn't be the one. Then who should have spoken? Who remained silent for all this time? Your soulmate felt frustration rising. Not toward you. Never toward you. Toward the silence. Toward every opportunity the truth had been ignored. Toward every moment someone chose comfort instead of honesty. Because silence sometimes protects the wrong people. And truth. Truth often arrives carrying both healing and heartbreak together. The conversation paused. Neither person spoke. Sometimes silence reveals more than words. Within that silence your soulmate remembered something you once said. It had sounded insignificant back then. Just another sentence spoken during an ordinary day. You smiled while saying it. I've learned not to expect people to understand. At the time those words floated away like countless conversations before them. Tonight. They returned. Not as memory. As revelation. Understanding suddenly felt urgent. Not optional. The ones sharing the story rubbed their hands together nervously. You have to promise you won't react before hearing everything. Promises made before painful truths are rarely comforting. They usually warn us that whatever comes next cannot be undone. Your soulmate nodded. But inside, their heart was already racing. No promise could prepare someone for discovering the hidden chapters of a person they deeply cared about. Especially when those chapters had been written in tears no one witnessed. Another deep breath. Another long pause. Then came the sentence that changed the direction of the entire evening. I can't believe someone did that to them. Nothing else. Just that. Short. Quiet. Almost whispered. Yet those few words shattered every peaceful assumption your soulmate had carried until this point. Did what? Who? When? Why? Questions flooded faster than answers. Their imagination tried filling every empty space. Each possibility felt worse than the one before. The room suddenly felt colder. Not because the temperature changed. Because innocence disappeared. The person continued carefully. They never told you, did they? Your soulmate slowly shook their head. No. I was afraid of that. Afraid. Such a small word. Yet fear always stands beside truths that have the power to change relationships forever. This was one of those truths. Still. The full picture remained hidden. Only fragments appeared. Broken pieces waiting to become complete. That incompleteness became unbearable. Your soulmate wanted certainty. Instead they received another memory. You know, the person said softly, they always protected everyone else before protecting themselves. Your soulmate closed their eyes. Because that sounded exactly like you. Always checking whether everyone else was okay. Always making sure others felt seen. always giving pieces of yourself until almost nothing remained for you. How had they admired that quality without questioning what it cost you? Love often notices generosity. Wisdom notices sacrifice. Tonight your soulmate began recognizing the difference. The conversation drifted backward through years. Forgotten places resurfaced. Old names returned. Choices once dismissed as insignificant suddenly revealed unexpected consequences. One event connected to another. Another connected to another. The pattern slowly emerged. Not completely. Only enough to make your soulmate realize your life had never been as simple as it appeared. There were hidden battles. Hidden betrayals. Hidden disappointments. Yet somehow, you kept choosing kindness. That realization broke something inside them. Because kindness offered after comfort is admirable. Kindness offered after betrayal is extraordinary. Who remains gentle after discovering cruelty? Very few. Yet somehow you had. Your soulmate could no longer remain seated. They stood and walked toward the nearest window. Outside the world continued moving. Inside they felt frozen. Every reflection staring back from the glass looked unfamiliar. Not because they had changed physically. Because understanding changes the face we wear. Behind them, the quiet voice continued. There is something else. Those 4 words carried even greater weight than everything before them. Something else? How could there possibly be more? The first revelation already felt impossible to absorb. Yet apparently the deepest truth had not even been spoken. Your soulmate turned slowly. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last. The silence stretched. Long enough for countless fears to grow. Long enough for hope to wonder whether it still belonged. Then the speaker reached into an old envelope resting on the table. Its edges were worn. Its color faded by time. Something inside had waited years to be seen. Your soulmate stared without blinking. What is that? They whispered. The answer came so quietly it almost disappeared into the silence. This is where everything truly begins. And the moment the envelope was opened, the first glimpse of what someone had done to you finally appeared, revealing a truth so heartbreaking that your soulmate's entire understanding of your past, your present, and your future was about to change forever. My beloved child. The room became so still that even the smallest sound seemed to carry its own meaning. The envelope rested between trembling hands, untouched for one final moment, as though time itself hesitated to let what was hidden finally come into the light. Your soulmate could not explain why their heart was pounding so fiercely. They had faced difficult conversations before. They had heard painful stories before. Yet something about this felt entirely different. This was not ordinary heartbreak. This was the kind of truth that quietly changes the way a person understands another soul forever. Slowly, almost reverently, the envelope was opened. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed by time. No grand announcement. No dramatic symbol. Just fragile pages that had survived years of silence. The person holding them closed their eyes before speaking. I promised I would never show these to anyone. Your soulmate swallowed hard. Then, why now? A long silence answered before words finally arrived. Because secrets that protect pain eventually become prisons. Those words settled deeply inside the room. Your soulmate suddenly realized this conversation was no longer about discovering facts. It was about discovering the invisible weight you had carried while pretending everything was fine. The paper unfolded. The handwriting was unmistakably personal. Not perfect. Not carefully planned. The letters wandered slightly across the page as though they had been written by someone whose hands were shaking. Your soulmate leaned closer. Only one sentence was read aloud at first. I wish they knew none of this was their fault. The word struck with astonishing force. Not their fault? Your soulmate felt something tighten inside their chest. What had happened that could make someone spend years believing they were responsible? The speaker looked toward the window before continuing. There was a time when they blamed themselves for everything. Your soulmate immediately remembered countless moments that suddenly carried new meaning. The unnecessary apologies. The way you sometimes apologized even when someone else had hurt you. The way you often said, "It's okay," even when it clearly wasn't. Back then, those habits seemed like simple kindness. Now they looked like survival. There is a difference between humility and learning to carry blame that never belonged to you. Someone had taught your heart that difference far too early. The pages continued. Each line revealed another small glimpse into a chapter of your life no one had fully understood. Not because you wanted attention. Quite the opposite. Because you had become an expert at protecting everyone else from your own sorrow. The speaker paused again. They believed that if people knew the whole story, they would see them differently. Your soulmate whispered almost instinctively. "I never would have." "No," the speaker replied softly. But they didn't know that. Those simple words echoed through the room. How many beautiful relationships remain incomplete because fear writes stories that love never would? How many hearts assume rejection before anyone has the opportunity to offer acceptance? Your soulmate's eyes became distant. They remembered the first time they saw you hesitate before trusting them. At the time they misunderstood it. They thought perhaps you simply needed space. Now they realized you had been measuring safety. Testing whether history was about to repeat itself. Some lessons are learned through joy. Others are carved into us by disappointment. Yours had been written by disappointment. The speaker turned another page. "This part." They whispered. "I almost can't read." Your soulmate felt every muscle tense. "What is it?" Another long breath. It explains why they stopped believing compliments. The room became unbearably quiet. Your soulmate remembered every compliment you had quietly brushed aside. Every time someone praised your kindness. Every time someone admired your strength. Every time someone reminded you of your worth. You smiled politely. But never truly believed them. Why? The answer finally began emerging. Someone spent a very long time convincing them they were never enough. The words seemed almost impossible to hear. Not because they were loud. Because they were heartbreakingly believable. Little by little, a person's confidence had been chipped away. Not through one terrible moment, but through hundreds of tiny moments. A cruel remark here. Dismissive silence there. Promises broken. Trust misplaced. Affection given only when convenient. Slowly, a beautiful heart had begun questioning its own value. Your soulmate covered their face. "I had no idea." No one did. And they never told anyone? They tried once. What happened? The speaker looked down. They weren't believed. Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. Some of the deepest wounds are not created by betrayal itself. They are created when someone gathers enough courage to speak. Only to discover nobody is listening. Your soulmate felt tears forming. Not because they pitied you. Because they suddenly admired you even more. You had continued loving. Continued encouraging others. Continued showing compassion. All while carrying memories that would have made many people grow cold. How? How had you remained gentle? The answer came unexpectedly. Because even after everything, they refused to become what hurt them. Those words lingered like light breaking through clouds. That was your quiet victory. Not perfection. Not a life without pain. but the decision that bitterness would never be allowed to define your future. Your soulmate smiled through tears. For the first time that evening, hope entered the room. Then, the speaker carefully reached beneath the papers. There is one more thing. Your soulmate looked up immediately. Another item emerged from the envelope. A small photograph. Its edges were worn from years of being handled. Your soulmate instinctively reached toward it. Before they could touch it, the speaker quietly said, "Be prepared." The photograph was turned over. At first it looked ordinary. Just another forgotten memory. But written across the back, in faded ink, was a single sentence. A sentence your soulmate recognized instantly. Not because they had seen it before. Because they had heard you whisper those exact words once, long ago, during a moment you thought no one remembered. If they ever knew the truth. Your soulmate froze. They would never look at me the same again. The realization hit like a wave. You had never been afraid of the past itself. You had been afraid that once someone understood it, they would stop loving you. Your soulmate gently held the photograph against their heart. With tears quietly falling, they whispered into the silence. You were wrong. But before another word could be spoken, their eyes finally focused on the front of the photograph. What they saw there drained every trace of color from their face. It was not the image itself that shocked them. It was the person standing beside you. Someone they knew. Someone they trusted. Someone they never imagined could be connected to the deepest heartbreak of your life. And in that breathtaking instant, the true mystery behind everything you had endured finally began to reveal itself. My beloved child. The photograph slipped ever so slightly between trembling fingers. For one suspended heartbeat, no one spoke. No one moved. The world beyond the window continued without interruption, unaware that inside this quiet room an old silence was beginning to lose its power. Your soulmate stared at the familiar face standing beside you in the picture. Disbelief washed over them. Their first instinct was to reject what they were seeing. No. The word escaped almost as a whisper. It can't be. The person across the table lowered their eyes. I said the same thing the first time I saw it. Your soulmate looked again, searching desperately for some mistake. Perhaps it was someone who only resembled that person. Perhaps the faded image was playing tricks on the eyes. Perhaps there was another explanation waiting just beyond the next sentence. Hope often bargains with truth before finally accepting it. But deep inside, they already sensed that this photograph had survived all these years because it carried a story no one had dared to tell. Their heartbeat grew louder. What happened that day? The question lingered in the air. Instead of answering immediately, the speaker gently turned the photograph over once more. Another line of faded handwriting appeared beneath the first. It was almost impossible to read. Time had stolen most of the ink. But one sentence remained. They believed the lie before they believed me. The room seemed to grow smaller. Your soulmate closed their eyes. Those few words revealed a kind of loneliness that no crowded room could ever erase. There are moments in life when pain comes from what someone does. Then there are moments when the greater pain comes from watching others choose the easier story instead of the truthful one. The speaker finally broke the silence. It wasn't one terrible day. Your soulmate looked up. It happened little by little. Another pause. That's why almost no one noticed. The realization settled heavily between them. Not every heartbreak announces itself. Sometimes trust is chipped away so slowly that the person losing it doesn't even realize how much has disappeared until years later. The speaker continued. At first it was small. Small comments. Small accusations. Small moments designed to make you question your own memory. Questions that sounded innocent. Remarks disguised as concern. Smiles that hid something far less kind. No single moment seemed powerful enough to change a life. But together, they slowly rewrote the way you saw yourself. Your soulmate remembered countless conversations. Times when you apologized before explaining yourself. Times when you doubted your own decisions. Times when you asked, "Maybe I'm overthinking." Back then those words sounded ordinary. Now they felt heartbreaking. Someone had taught you to question your own voice. The speaker's hands tightened around the photograph. They wanted control. Not through shouting. Not through obvious cruelty. Through something much quieter. Something far more difficult to recognize. They slowly convinced you that your feelings were always too much. Your memories were unreliable. Your instincts were mistaken. Your dreams were unrealistic. Until eventually, you stopped defending yourself. Not because you agreed. Because you became exhausted. Your soulmate felt tears gathering again. How many battles had you fought in complete silence? How many nights had you stared at the ceiling wondering whether you were truly the problem? No one should have to carry that question alone. The speaker's voice softened. But do you know what amazed me the most? Your soulmate slowly shook their head. They never stopped praying that everyone else would find peace. Even those who had misunderstood you. Even those who had walked away. Even those who never apologized. You still hoped life would be kind to them. That kind of mercy cannot be explained by ordinary strength. It grows only in a heart that refuses to let darkness become its identity. Your soulmate smiled sadly. They're stronger than they know. No, the speaker replied gently. They're kinder than they know. Those words lingered like the first light before dawn. For a brief moment, the heaviness inside the room lifted. Not because the past had changed. Because love was beginning to see the past through truth instead of assumption. Then the speaker reached into the envelope one final time. I almost forgot. Your soulmate looked up. There was something hidden behind the photograph. A tiny folded note. No name. No date. Just one carefully folded piece of paper. It had clearly been opened before. More than once. The edges were worn from years of quiet hands unfolding it and placing it back again. Your soulmate accepted it carefully. Almost reverently. As though holding something sacred. When they unfolded it, only a few lines appeared. The handwriting matched the earlier pages. But this message felt different. It was not filled with sadness. It was filled with hope. It read, "If someone ever truly sees my heart instead of my scars, tell them I never stopped believing love could still find me." The words blurred behind tears. Your soulmate could barely breathe. For the first time, they understood something they had missed all along. You had never been searching for someone perfect. You had been quietly hoping for someone safe. Someone who would not ask you to prove your worth. Someone who would stay when the truth became complicated. Someone who would choose understanding over assumptions. Your soulmate pressed the note gently against their heart. I wish I had known sooner. The speaker nodded. So do I. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall against the window. Soft. Steady. Almost like the sky itself had chosen this moment to become part of the story. Neither of them noticed another small object slipping unnoticed from the envelope onto the floor. It landed face down beneath the table. Hidden in the shadows. Minutes passed before your soulmate finally bent to pick it up. It wasn't another photograph. It wasn't another letter. It was an old key. Attached to it was a tiny paper tag with just 3 handwritten words. Open when forgiven. Your soulmate stared at the key in stunned silence. What does it open? The speaker slowly lifted their eyes. I was hoping you could tell me. And in that breathtaking moment, they both realized the greatest secret had never been inside the envelope at all. It had been waiting behind a locked door that no one had opened for years. A door connected to one final truth about your past, one that would either heal every broken piece of this story, or reveal a heartbreak far deeper than anyone had imagined. My beloved child. The old key rested quietly in your soulmate's hand. It was surprisingly heavy, not because of its size, but because of everything it seemed to represent. Time had worn its edges smooth. The metal had lost its shine long ago, yet somehow it still carried the feeling that it had been waiting, not for days or months, but for years. Neither of them spoke. Some objects do not need introductions. They carry silence like a language of their own. Your soulmate turned the key over slowly, tracing the tiny scratches that covered its surface. Every mark hinted at a story. Every imperfection whispered that someone had once held this very key with trembling hands. What if we're not supposed to open whatever this belongs to? They asked softly. The speaker looked toward the rain-covered window. Then why would it still exist? That question lingered. Some things remain hidden because they are dangerous. Others remain hidden because the right moment has not yet arrived. Perhaps this was one of those moments. The speaker reached into an old wooden drawer beside the table. From it emerged a faded notebook bound in worn leather. Dust lifted gently as it touched the light. I almost forgot about this. Your soulmate's curiosity deepened. What is it? It belonged to someone who promised they would protect the truth, until the truth was ready to protect itself. Those words settled heavily in the room. The notebook was carefully opened. Its first few pages contained little more than dates, places, and scattered thoughts. Nothing seemed unusual. Then, halfway through, a folded map slipped onto the table. It was old. Far older than either of them expected. Several places had been circled in faded ink, but only one location had a single word written beside it. Home. Your soulmate frowned. That's impossible. The speaker nodded slowly. I know. That place hasn't belonged to anyone in years. So everyone believed. Outside, thunder rolled quietly across the distant sky. It wasn't frightening. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Your soulmate looked back at the map. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. Years ago, you had once driven past an abandoned house. You became unusually quiet. When asked if everything was all right, you smiled and changed the subject. At the time, it seemed insignificant. Now, it felt anything but. Could that have been the place? Could that forgotten house still be connected to the life you never spoke about? The speaker gently turned another page of the notebook. This time there was writing. Only one paragraph. The handwriting was different from the letters inside the envelope. It belonged to someone else. Someone who had witnessed more than they had ever admitted. It read, there will come a day when someone who truly loves them begins asking the questions we were too afraid to answer. If that day arrives, do not stop them. Let compassion lead where fear once ruled. Your soulmate read those lines twice. Then a third time. Their eyes filled again. They expected this day? The speaker nodded. I think, they hoped for it. Hope. Such a fragile thing. Yet even after everything you had endured, somewhere deep inside your heart, hope had quietly survived. Not loudly. Not confidently. But faithfully. Like a tiny candle refusing to surrender to a storm. Your soulmate smiled through tears. They never stopped believing someone would understand. The speaker answered with gentle certainty. No. They never stopped hoping. For the first time since the conversation began, neither heartbreak nor mystery filled the room. Instead, there was purpose. Every painful revelation now pointed towards something greater. Not revenge. Not anger. Healing. The key was no longer simply a key. It had become a symbol. Not of locked doors, but of locked memories waiting to be met with love instead of fear. Your soulmate held it tightly. If opening this hurts them again. The speaker interrupted. Then don't open it to satisfy curiosity. Another pause. Open it only if your heart is prepared to carry what there's carried alone. Those words changed everything. Because love is not measured by how badly we want answers. It is measured by what we choose to do once those answers arrive. Rain continued tapping gently against the glass. The room had grown darker. Only a single lamp illuminated the notebook, the envelope, the photograph, and the old key lying together upon the table. Pieces of one story. Fragments waiting to become whole. Then something unexpected happened. As your soulmate carefully folded the map, a tiny corner tore loose. Hidden inside the fold was something no one had noticed before. A narrow strip of paper. Barely wider than a finger. On it were only 6 handwritten words. They thought I never remembered everything. Your soulmate's breath caught. Remembered what? Who believed you had forgotten? The speaker stared silently at the words. I don't think. They hesitated. I don't think this story has been about discovering what someone did to them. Your soulmate slowly looked up. What do you mean? The speaker's voice dropped almost to a whisper. I think the real story is that everyone assumed they had buried the truth. They glanced toward the key. When all along, they remembered every single detail. A chill passed through the room. Not one of fear. One of realization. Sometimes survivors remain silent, not because they have forgotten, but because speaking before they are ready would reopen wounds that have only just begun to heal. Your soulmate closed the notebook with great care. I understand now. No, the speaker replied gently. You've only reached the beginning. Outside, the rain suddenly stopped. Clouds slowly parted. A single ray of evening light reached through the window and fell directly across the old key, causing it to shine for the first time in years. Neither of them could explain why. But in that quiet moment, both understood that the journey ahead was no longer about uncovering a heartbreaking past. It was about discovering whether the truth, once fully revealed, would finally set 2 waiting hearts free. And somewhere beyond that unanswered question, another secret was already waiting, one that would force your soulmate to make the most important decision of their life. My beloved child. The last rays of evening lingered across the old key, casting a thin line of golden light through the quiet room. Neither of them reached for it immediately. Some decisions ask for courage before they ask for action. Your soulmate remained motionless, their thoughts moving faster than their heartbeat. Until this night, they believed love meant learning someone's favorite memories, understanding their dreams, and celebrating their happiest moments. Now they were discovering another side of love. Sometimes love begins when someone chooses to stay after learning the chapters everyone else found too difficult to read. The speaker gently gathered the scattered papers and returned them to the envelope. This isn't the end of what was left behind. Your soulmate looked up. There's more? The speaker nodded. There always was. A slow breath escaped into the silence. I simply didn't know whether anyone was ready to hear it. Outside, the rain-soaked streets reflected the first lights of evening. Everything looked peaceful. Yet inside that room, another hidden door was beginning to open. The speaker walked toward a small bookshelf tucked into the corner. From behind several old books, they carefully removed a tiny wooden box. Unlike the envelope, this box had no dust. Someone had touched it recently. Someone had remembered. Your soulmate noticed the same symbol carved into the lid that had appeared faintly on the old key. What is inside? The speaker hesitated. I've never opened it. You had the chance. I didn't have the right. Those words settled deeply. Not every mystery belongs to the person who finds it. Some belong to the person who has earned the responsibility of holding it with compassion. The wooden box was placed gently upon the table. Its lock was small. The old key seemed to fit perfectly. Yet neither of them moved. Your soulmate closed their eyes. A quiet realization came over them. If opening this is only about satisfying my curiosity. They slowly withdrew their hand. Then it should remain closed. The speaker smiled for the first time that evening. I think that's exactly why you're the one meant to open it. Carefully. Almost reverently. Your soulmate placed the key into the lock. The metal resisted for only a moment. Then, a soft click echoed through the room. No dramatic sound. No burst of light. Only the quiet release of something that had waited years to be seen. The lid opened. Inside lay only three things. A pressed white flower. A silver bracelet with one missing charm. And a folded letter tied with a faded blue ribbon. Your soulmate stared silently. So little. The speaker gently replied. Sometimes the smallest things carry the greatest stories. The flower had nearly lost its color, yet it had been preserved with extraordinary care. The bracelet bore tiny scratches from years of wear. One empty link suggested something important had once been attached. Your soulmate picked it up carefully. It feels familiar. It should. You've seen it before. A memory flashed across their mind. One afternoon. Long before this conversation. They remembered noticing that exact bracelet on your wrist. When they casually asked about it, you smiled gently and changed the subject. At the time, they thought nothing of it. Now, that forgotten moment returned with completely different meaning. Your soulmate slowly placed the bracelet back into the box. Then their attention turned toward the letter. Unlike everything else, this paper looked unopened. The ribbon remained tied exactly as it had years ago. Written across the front were only a few simple words. For the one who finally understands. The room fell silent once again. Your soulmate whispered. Do you think this was meant for me? The speaker looked thoughtfully at the envelope, the photograph, the notebook, and finally the letter. I don't know. Another pause. But I know it wasn't meant for someone who only wanted answers. Your soulmate carefully untied the ribbon. The paper unfolded with delicate resistance. Its first line immediately stole the breath from the room. If you are reading this. They stopped. Emotion tightened their voice. The speaker waited patiently. Your soulmate continued. Then someone finally loved me enough to search for the truth instead of believing the rumors. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Those words alone explained years of silence. Years of misunderstanding. Years of waiting. The letter continued. I don't need anyone to rescue me. I never needed perfection. I only prayed that one day someone would believe my heart before believing the stories told about me. Tears quietly slipped down your soulmate's face. They suddenly understood why every piece of this journey had unfolded so slowly. It wasn't about exposing the past. It was about revealing the extraordinary resilience hidden beneath it. The letter described no revenge. It named no enemy. It asked for no punishment. Instead, every line pointed toward forgiveness, not because the pain had been small, but because the heart writing those words refused to let hatred become its final chapter. Your soulmate whispered through trembling tears. How could anyone carry this much pain, and still choose kindness? The speaker answered softly. Perhaps kindness was never their weakness. It was their greatest act of courage. Just then, something slipped unnoticed from between the folded pages of the letter. It drifted gently onto the table. A tiny photograph. Much smaller than the first one. Your soulmate picked it up. It showed only two hands. One larger. One smaller. Holding each other. Nothing else. No faces. No names. Only a date written on the back. Your soulmate's eyes widened. I know this date. The speaker leaned closer. So do I. It wasn't the date of heartbreak. It wasn't the date of betrayal. It was the date your soulmate had first met you. For years they believed it had been an ordinary beginning. Now they realized something astonishing. You had carried this tiny photograph with you on the very day your paths crossed. As though some quiet part of your heart had already been hoping. Already been praying. Already been waiting for someone who would one day understand why you guarded your heart so carefully. Your soulmate held the photograph close, unable to speak. Then, beneath the photograph, they noticed one final handwritten sentence hidden inside the box. It was so faint they almost missed it. If destiny ever brings you here. They paused. The final word seemed almost impossible to believe. Tell them the greatest truth has never been what happened to me. A long silence filled the room. Your soulmate slowly read the last line aloud. The greatest truth is who stood beside me when everyone else walked away. The room grew still once more. Because in that breathtaking instant, your soulmate realized the next chapter would not reveal another hidden betrayal. It would reveal the identity of the one quiet soul who had protected your light from the shadows all along. And that revelation would change everything they believed about your destiny together.